The Chicago Bulls once again entered a trade deadline where everyone and their mother was very confident that they would be shipping away pretty much everybody. Once again, a season where mediocrity is the only thing you can expect, and it was at a point where it seemed as obvious gets that everybody on this roster that does not have a future here should be getting shipped, from Nikola Vucevic to Zach LaVine to Kobe White. Across the board, these guys should have been on the move, and yet it didn't happen besides for the Zach LaVine trade, and I've had a lot of people ask me what my thoughts are. Unfortunately, it's more of the same crap that it's always been. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Buckets. If you're over on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and drop a like. Actually, wait, it's Rusty Buckets now. I just forgot. I'm gonna have to get used to that. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Buckets. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like, check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you want to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. With that said, I'm just going to give you some of my rough thoughts on the Chicago Bulls, nothing that complicated. So first, the Zach LaVine trade. I did a video over on the third channel, which is called Little Rusty Buckets, where I talked about how I just simply did not expect to get a big return for Zach LaVine, so when he got dealt, that didn't surprise me. What they ended up getting back was essentially just filler players, Trey Jones, Zach Collins, and who was the other guy? It goes to show you how irrelevant these players were. Oh, Kevin Huerter. Contract filler guys who are going to take up the amount of cap space that Zach LaVine did. And then they also got back their full rights to the 2025 draft pick that was originally top 10 protected, which actually does have some level of consequence because the Chicago Bulls are, of course, still trying to be competitive. And that, to me, was the most egregious aspect out of all of this. To think that, especially after this Zach LaVine trade, where you swap them for Kevin Huerter, who's bad, Zach Collins, who's bad, and Trey Jones, who's fine, but plays the same position of multiple players on this team. There are multiple point guards on the Chicago Bulls. Kobe White, you can argue, is a combo guard. Lonzo Ball can play the two. After that, you've got Josh Giddey, you got Trey Jones, you got Ayo Dosunmu, who can also play the two if you really need him to. So I'm not acting as though these guards are strictly point guards, but this is a team of point guards. First and foremost, it is a team full of guys who play the point guard position. Meanwhile, we're stuck with Nikola Vucevic at the center, which Nikola Vucevic has been pretty good this year, actually. His stats are great, and as a result of him plus Zach LaVine playing pretty good this year, the Chicago Bulls are right back at their hovering around 500 and competing for a play-in spot tier that they have existed for the last few seasons now. Nikola Vucevic's trade value is never going to be higher than it was at this year's trade deadline, because he is hitting his threes, overall, just like 20 point per game scoring, rebounding the ball well, and the Chicago Bulls remained a decent-ish defense with him at the helm. There is enough there to conceivably get a first-round pick, but even if the market is so shallow that you can't make something like that happen, well, then at the very least trade the guy, because, again, his value is never going to be higher than it is right now. But more important than the value you would get hypothetically in a trade for the guy is the value of finally bottoming out, of finally understanding that we are rebuilding. This core is done now. We aren't sticking with any of the remnants of the past. We are done. That has not been the approach. While there has been Manas Buzelis as a young player getting more and more minutes over time, as it seems like, I don't know, there's at least this level of paying some attention to the development of your future players. Either way, the mission seems to be the same mission that it has been, which is mediocrity, crossing the bare minimum of being a competent NBA team, and then never striving for anything better than this. After the trade deadline, where the Bulls traded Zach and then didn't do fucking jack shit else, there was reports that there was a Lonzo Ball deal where a first-round pick was on the table, and there were reports that there was a Nikola Vucevic deal with the Golden State Warriors where they would have gotten a shitload of second-round draft capital and like a Moses Moody, who is a young player with some upside and somebody that Chicago Bulls fans could at least glean some level of excitement about, some level of interest. Because for me, what I've been saying is the Chicago Bulls have been playing meaningless basketball. They have been playing basketball that is not worth tuning into. But unfortunately, the Chicago Bulls fan base is one of the most loyal, and I would say loyal to a fault team fan bases in the entire league. They're almost always towards the top of the league in attendance, and it's not earned in the slightest. You are tuning in to mediocre to bad basketball featuring a bunch of basketball players that you can't really get invested in. How many fucking big time Nikola Vucevic fans are there in Chicago? How many people are like, man, we got to go to the UC. We got to see Vooch play live. Nobody gives a shit about that. You don't have people who are supposed to fill the seats, but they still manage to fill the seats because they are the Chicago Bulls. It's this double-edged sword that I've been feeling about the Bulls forever, where they should operate as one of the league's best markets, because they are. They're, in terms of generating revenue, in terms of being able to have pull, the Chicago Bulls should theoretically be right up there with like the Knicks and the Warriors in that conversation. However, they have not operated as though they are a large market. They make decisions like small markets do. Small markets make the decision to just be mediocre and competitive because they can't really offer a whole lot better than that. But teams that have the kind of money to operate that the Chicago Bulls do, every other team in the league is operating better, is operating with the mentality that they are one of the top dogs. The Chicago Bulls have not done that, but because they do have that fan base that keeps paying their bills, there is no incentive to stop being this just competitive team that gets the job done. And AK, whether it is him or Mark Eversley, AK seems to be at the very least the face of these decisions, or lack of decisions, I should say. Regardless of what it is, the Bulls are one of the worst managed teams in the league, because if there is one thing that drives me insane in terms of how a franchise can operate, it is complacency. And these guys have felt as though their job is secure and that their job is done because they are paying for, they're filling out seats. And the Chicago Bulls owners, Jerry Reinsdorf's son, these guys have operated with that mentality. As long as the money is coming in, we don't really give a shit. They don't have the mentality to try and create a championship contending team. So if the people who are actually running things do not have these larger aspirations, it really feels as though there's no reason as a fan to have those larger aspirations. So you just build a fan base of complacency. And that's sad. It's disgusting, frankly. I think if you are owning and operating an NBA team and you do not care at all about the on-the-court product, then why are you doing it? I feel like there are probably better investments to make, especially investments that are less likely to make everybody fucking hate your guts, as everybody in Chicago hates the Reinsdorfs, because I believe they also operate the White Sox and have issues in that department as well. That's what I have heard. I don't know the details of it, but it wouldn't surprise me at the very least. Billionaires love to just go in and ruin fucking sports franchises. It's like, yeah, we're going to ruin everything. Not only am I going to take your jobs, not only am I going to make your living wage worse and worse with every year while the rich keep getting richer, but we're also going to ruin your fucking sports team so you don't even have an escape for the hell that billionaires have created for all of us Americans. So across the board, it's just a fucking gross disaster. There's been a lot of conversation lately about the Garpax era, and as much as you rightfully can shit on that era because they did not do a good job managing the team, they weren't pussies about it. They weren't afraid to make decisions. They didn't consistently always do this "we have our guys and we're happy with them" thing. The one time there was that, It was when it was the remnants of the 2011 Bulls team, like Joakim Noah, Taj Gibson. That was when they had the "we have our guys" mentality. But even still, they did that Taj Gibson for Cameron Payne deal, which didn't age well, but at the very least it was some level of being proactive, some level of trying to get a young player on the team to be excited about. Unfortunately, they invested in Sid the Sloth, but, basketball player in exchange for another basketball player. Crazy concept. Trades, not a thing this franchise does. In fact, they are literally at the bottom of the league in trades. They do not make deals, and when they do, they get fucking fleeced on them. They didn't get a first-round pick for Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, or Zach LaVine, when all of them, if they were traded at the right time, should have netted you that value. But instead, they held on to them, made sure they became worse assets, and then sold low on the players that they did sell, and basically aren't going to sell at all on a Nikola Vucevic. Barely did on DeMar DeRozan because that shit was a sign-and trade, so you weren't going to get much back in that exchange either. So across the board, what are we doing here? What is the point? I have been going back and forth for years with the idea of not being a Chicago Bulls fan, because just to give you a brief amount of context, I'm only a Chicago Bulls fan because my father is. I've been to Chicago 2-3 times. It's nice. I like Chicago. If it wasn't so fucking cold, I would actually consider living there. I just hate cold weather, so that's just never going to happen. But I'm not from Chicago. I have no connection to Chicago. My dad, who's from Alabama, watched them because he had to choose an NBA team at the time, and everybody was a Celtics or Lakers fan in the early 80s, and he didn't want to be, he was being a contrarian. I can't just join in on all these bandwagons. I gotta say, fuck the Lakers and the Celtics. I'm a Bulls fan. And then Michael Jordan got drafted a year or two after he decided to be a fan. I didn't get any shit like that. All right. I have seen the Chicago Bulls win. Is it literally one fucking playoff series or two? My entire fan base, when they beat the Brooklyn Nets, when Nate Robinson went off. Nate Robinson had a crazy series, hit a game winner, 20, 30-point games here or there. Great stuff. That was actually what initially got me to be a fan. Since then, they beat the Milwaukee Bucks, like Giannis, but not really. Before Giannis, I think Jabari Parker would have been injured. I think this is the team that has Michael Carter-Williams and Jared Bayless and like a young Chris Middleton. Not a ready-made Bucks team. Before Giannis was really Giannis. They beat them. They beat them in 6 games after taking a 3-0 lead, and they almost allowed it to go to a Game 7. That Game 6, they did beat the brakes off of them. I'll give them that. But a series that got prolonged further than it had any right to, and that's the only one, other than the playoff series I watched that got me into them. Since I've been a Chicago Bulls fan, since that playoff series got me into them, they've won a playoff series again exactly once. And that's not for lack of making it. The Bulls have made the playoffs more than they haven't, I believe, or they're right about 50-50 since I've been a fan, but it has not translated to anything of substance. Playoff series that you're going to lose. Playoff series that it's like, yeah, we are just a formality for a good team. That's the best that we are capable of being. It's very, very depressing. What I have declared, what I have said for myself, what my mentality is going forward, I will be a Chicago Bulls fan until expansion and there is a new team to root for. Ideally, I'm leaning the Seattle Supersonics because Seattle is a cool city. I like Nirvana. That's nice. When there is a new franchise that there isn't baggage associated with it, I can just attach myself to it and go, okay, I'm rooting for this new expansion team. To me, that would be fun. I'm not hopping on any kind of bandwagon. Expansion teams are usually bad for a little bit, but if they at the very least are a franchise that operates with this mentality of we're trying to win championships and we'll do what we have to get there, no matter what series of steps you're on, when you're trying to achieve that goal. As long as that goal is in mind, I can rock with it. But I can't just keep rocking with a franchise that clearly doesn't care. Why would I care if the people who actually run the thing can't bother to? It's hard to justify it. Like, I don't like the idea of switching fan bases. I would love to be a Chicago Bulls fan my entire life and have that pay off for me, but I'm also not going to commit to that if I'm very, very confident they won't. So expansion is coming in 2028. If the Chicago Bulls are still just this disastrous team that does not have upside, that does not give you reason to believe in their future, then I'm detaching myself from them. This trade deadline was just yet another moment where I was like, what am I doing? I have watched the Chicago Bulls the least that I have in years this year, and it's only going to keep going down with time unless they give me something to watch. Do like Manas Buzelis. Buzelis video will be out by the time this one comes out, so go check that out over on Little Rusty Buckets. That's it. See you guys.